When will Ryan Leonard sign with the Capitals, and how aggressive should GM Brian McClellan get this summer? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On. Before that, in various other outlets, I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minute Cast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we are going to go into the weeds and discuss possibilities about how this team can get better. The Capitals did not live up to expectation this last year. They made it to the playoffs barely, but got eliminated in 4 games. What needs to change so this team can make a deep push? We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about when will Ryan Leonard sign with the Capitals. Could recent activity around the NHL sway his opinion? We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about big changes. Would the Capitals be willing to swing for the fences and go after Stamkos? A little bit later, we will talk about a player I've heard quite a bit about that the Capitals should pursue, and that is Mitch Marner. Is it crazy or is it even a possibility? I'll talk about that. But just to get it going here, we'll talk about Ryan Leonard and what was said that Brian McClellan spoke with him, and Leonard got back to him saying that he wants to play hockey his sophomore season with Boston College. But what was spoke about today on the Daily Face-Off with Frank Saravalli is that could what have happened at the draft lottery the other night, could that sway Leonard's opinion to potentially sign with the Capitals and join them sooner? Interesting to think about. There has been a lot of speculation about how Macklin Celebrini being selected first overall by the San Jose Sharks could affect the Washington Capitals. According to Frank Saravalli and Colby Cohen, it could trigger a domino effect that results in Will Smith signing with the Sharks. This, in turn, might push the Capitals to put more pressure on Ryan Leonard to sign his entry-level contract. So Celebrini being selected first overall by the Sharks, could that set the wheels in motion? Is it possible that all of a sudden Ryan Leonard signs a contract with the Capitals? I guess, this is the off season and it's the time of season to speculate, to pontificate about different things that can happen. Listen, I think that Ryan Leonard said that he plans on playing hockey with Boston College in the fall for his sophomore season. I don't necessarily think that Celebrini being selected by the Sharks and, the possibility of Will Smith signing with the Sharks, I don't know if that's necessarily going to set the wheels in motion. I understand where his head is at and about the possibility, and I also understand that this is the off season and have things like this to talk about. I know all about it because I do it on the show about dreaming about what potentially could be. However, Leonard has already stated his intention to play his sophomore season at Boston College. Despite the speculation, Cohen believes that Leonard is the next player to watch, and if Smith signs with the Sharks, the Caps might try harder to get Leonard to sign with him. Possibly, and I think the Capitals would get markedly better next season. The thing of it is sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't. And, we know how Leonard has played in juniors. We know he's played at college. We know his history. But does that necessarily mean that will translate to the NHL and the Capitals? Potentially. That is what we're hoping for. While the Capitals value Leonard's talent, they supported his decision to return to Boston College for another year to continue his development. Leonard has an outstanding freshman season, scoring 31 goals and adding 29 assists for 60 points in 41 games. If there's any chance that Leonard could do anything close to that, like 31 goals, where would the Capitals be with that kind of offensive firepower? Markedly better. And I think that that's what it's going to take for this team to get over the top, because, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, if the Capitals don't make any big splashes, any big moves, then what can we expect from this team next year other than lackluster hockey? I don't really want to see that. It's worth noting that this speculation is just for fun and not based on concrete information. Capitals GM Brian McClellan has praised Leonard's leadership and progress during his first year, and the team plans to monitor his development and progress next year. The 2024 NHL Draft is coming up soon. It'll be interesting to see if the domino effect actually takes place. Listen, sign me all up. If Ryan Leonard said he wants to sign his contract with the Capitals in the fall, absolutely. I would love that, as we saw how the Capitals struggled in the goal scoring department. I've talked about it. Alex Ovechkin's slow start, and Dylan Strome, carrying the bulk of the way to the start of the season with goal scoring production, that if you could add a player like Leonard to this team, or another big goal scorer, this team could get better that much quicker. And I think that's only part of the equation. I think that they need to address the blue line as well. As we can't have John Carlson, eating up all those minutes. So Leonard will fix the offense in part, but we can't expect him to do everything. And I'll talk about in the next couple segments here about potential big moves. And some people may scoff at some of those moves, but I think you add Leonard. I think that, you see improvement from McMichael and LaPierre. Say Ovechkin has a pretty good season, and Wilson and Strome, they can contribute. This team would be a lot better. Are they going to be as good as the New York Rangers? Are they going to be as good as the Dallas Stars? I'm not going to say that they're going to be quite that good yet, but I think it's steps in the right direction. So, if you're asking me, Dan, if you're the GM of the team and you could find a way to finagle it to get Ryan Leonard to sign in the fall, absolutely. But it's a tightrope to walk. You can't just pour the pressure on him. Leonard could say, listen, guys, I told you I want to play my sophomore season at Boston College. I don't care what Celebrini does. I don't care if Smith signs with the Sharks. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not associated with them. I understand that, I played together with Smith and that kind of thing, but that is not going to dictate how I'm going to play. It would be nice, but ultimately I think that it's kind of, a Hail Mary pass to think that Ryan Leonard is going to entertain a thought like that just because of these speculations made by Frank Saravalli in the Daily Faceoff. Again, I understand where Frank is coming from, but ultimately, I don't know if there's any smoke to that fire. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we'll talk about how aggressive should Brian McClellan get this offseason. Steven Stamkos, how much better would the Capitals be with Stamkos on this team? I'll discuss straight ahead. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that help you find match candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job according to Indeed US data. So if you are the person that's involved in HR, the hiring and firing, take a lot of the stress out of your job with Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/locked on. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this is the off season, and I am not afraid to dream. Let's close our eyes and imagine, if you will, how can we make this team better without any preconceived notions of this guy's untouchable or this guy's never going to come to the Capitals. Let's not be afraid to dream and think about what could be. One player that potentially could help this team is a player named Steven Stamkos. I think that, we know who he is, the folklore and, the hula about who he was for the Lightning. But there is the possibility that the Lightning and Steven Stamkos don't work out a deal. Is there any possibility that Brian McClellan could finagle a deal to get him to come to the district? Listen, I'm not afraid to dream. As the offseason for the Capitals is in full swing, Caps fans are speculating about the moves the team should make to improve their chances of success. One of the key areas of concern has been the chemistry between Alex Ovechkin and the centers he's played with. Some suggest that his struggles on the ice may be due to a lack of compatibility with his line mates. He spoke about that as things were constantly changing. The lines were changing. For the longest time, it was Kuznetsov or Backstrom, players that he knew well. And I think that at least to start the season, Alex Ovechkin struggled to find chemistry. With Backstrom stepping away from hockey and Kuzy being dealt to the Hurricanes, the Caps may need to consider looking externally to find a suitable center for Ovechkin. However, the team also has a goal of getting younger and faster, which may limit their options. Now, listen, Steven Stamkos is definitely not the guy that's going to help the team get younger, but that is okay. I'm willing to look past his age and take a look at the back of his hockey card and what he has accomplished, and wow, how much better the Capitals potentially could be. One player who has been suggested as a potential target is Steven Stamkos. Although he is not necessarily a perfect fit for the Caps' desire to get younger and faster, he is experienced and talented left-wing center who could help bolster this team's offense. Stamkos, who will turn 34 in July, in 1,082 games, he has 555 goals and 582 assists. Now, let's bring it a little closer to home. In the 23-24 season, in 79 games, he had 40 goals and 41 assists. How crazy and how crazy good would the Capitals be with Steven Stamkos on this team? Get ready to push the crazy button, because I'm getting a little crazy here, but it's okay. It's okay to dream. I mean, listen, before Darcy Kuemper came to this team, it's like there's no way Darcy's going to come here. He's a Stanley Cup winner. Forget about it. Listen, anything's possible. The Capitals have a lot of star power on this team. It's not like he's going to the Coyotes or whatever the Utah team is going to call itself. That I think that it is okay to do, to dream, to believe. I believe. I think you should believe as well. Stamkos has been the all-time franchise leader in goals, points, and power play goals for Tampa Bay, but he also reportedly was disappointed that the team's general manager did not entertain an extension for him over the summer. Despite his solid start to the season, he's on track for another 80-point season. Again, this is some data that I pulled from earlier, and the club's middling performance, it is unclear whether the Lightning will re-sign him or ask him for a pay cut. A pay cut, taking a hometown discount. Many players don't want to do that. If I was a hockey player, I would not take a hometown discount. Why wouldn't I? Well, the biggest reason is I only have so much time to play hockey, and I want to maximize my return. Because at the end of the day, when you're retired and you're not like, man, I wish I had this money to do this. I'm glad I took a discount to help out the Lightning. I mean, very few players are willing to do that. If I was Stamkos, I would not do that. With more than $75 million already committed to the 24-25 salary cap, the Bolts may not be able to offer Stamkos that kind of deal he's looking for. However, the team's GM has promised Stamkos will not be traded before the deadline, though he is not committed to re-signing him. So interesting possibilities of what potentially could be. I'm just thinking about it. Again, before you say, Dan, that's impossible or he's too old, just take a look at his stats and think about how much better the Capitals would have been had they had a player like Stamkos. If Stamkos wants to stay with the Lightning, he may need to accept a team-friendly discount as he has done in the past. Whether he will be able to do so remains to be unseen, but it is clear that he is focused on performing at his very best regardless of where he plays. So an interesting thing to think about, and it's fun. I like talking about this time of year, of course. I love the regular season when I can tell you about the games and what happened, but I really can dig my teeth into this time of season when I'm going to, really, just cast the line out there and get into the weeds and hope that I can get a bass and just really talk about some crazy moves that potentially could be. So let's go into the weeds this summer and talk about potentially big moves. Steven Stamkos could be an absolute game changer for the Capitals. Again, if you brush aside any preconceived notion that it couldn't happen or won't happen, wow, how much better this team could be. Again, that was one of the things that the Capitals struggled with. I do believe that Alex Ovechkin would have been a lot better if Nick Backstrom was 100%, or Kuznetsov. Again, Backstrom didn't play with Ovi that often anymore, but you know what I'm talking about, that there was a lot of disarray to start the season. And, there was kind of throughout the season with injuries and young players coming up, that if you could have a guy that has a proven track record like Steven Stamkos, my, oh my, how much better this team could be. Crazy things that could happen, but what is one of the things that we've heard Brian McClellan say? I'm going to seek out a top 6 forward. I think Steven Stamkos fits that bill. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will continue to dream about potential Capitals players. How much better would the Capitals be with a player like Mitch Marner, and do they have the assets, the potential to get something like that done? I'll discuss straight ahead. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now, listen, if you are watching an NBA playoff game, or say you're watching an NHL playoff game and you're not that interested, well, because the Capitals aren't in it, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, the game is that much more exciting. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the player I'm going to talk about next here is not going to be an easy thing to do. It's not going to be a free agency thing. It would require a trade. And, how is it going to be possible? I'm going to talk about a player that I have heard quite a bit about from Capitals fans that the Capitals should pursue, and that's Mitch Marner. Quite a big name. We know what he means for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it does seem that there is a bit of discontent between the Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner, and potentially in that vice versa as well. Would Mitch Marner entertain the idea of waiving his no move clause and go to another team. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Capitals. How crazy would it be if Mitch Marner was on the Caps? One player whose name has been frequently mentioned in conversations about goal scoring help is Mitch Marner. Despite being a right wing, he fits the bill for what the GM, Brian McClellan, said he's looking for in a top six forward. However, given Marner's high salary and cap hit, it would take some strategic maneuvering to make a trade work. Mitch Marner's salary is $8 million plus, and his cap hit is $10,903,000 for, well, this was the past 23-24 season. If you're not familiar with Mitch Marner, say you're just a Caps-centric fan, Mitch Marner, who was drafted 4th overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2015, has played 8 seasons in the NHL and has a total of 639 points in 576 games. With an additional 50 playoff points in 57 games, he will become an unrestricted free agent in 2025 when he is 28 years old. Again, at 28 years old, I guess if you're under 30, that's what it's all about. It's a young man's game, and some of the teams that are playing very well are the teams that have young players on the team. Now, how would the Capitals be able to facilitate something like that, as right now they don't have enough cap space? Well, of course, they're going to have to make some sort of trade. While Marner would be a great addition to the Capitals, it would be difficult to pull off a trade like that. The Leafs are currently looking for help in net. As we saw, they got fanned out in the playoffs, and the Capitals have Darcy Kuemper and Charlie Lindgren. Additionally, the Capitals would have to weigh the cost of potentially shipping out prospects or young talent like Connor McMichael and Hendrix LaPierre. Again, I don't think Darcy Kuemper or Charlie Lindgren by themselves would get it done. There's a lot of different ways you can finagle this. You could do salary retention on Darcy Kuemper. You could make it Darcy Kuemper plus Connor McMichael. You can make it Charlie Lindgren plus a Capitals prospect. There's a lot of different ways you could go about doing it. It's just depending on how creative Brian McClellan is willing to get, and if Toronto is a taker on it. Listen, they have struggled. Samsonov, that Samsonov went to the Toronto Maple Leafs and, showed moments of greatness, but kind of like with the Capitals, was a bit hot, was a bit cold, and is ultimately playing on a Toronto Maple Leafs team that I think is cursed to a certain extent. So I think that if you take a look at the Maple Leafs, if they added like Darcy Kuemper or Charlie Lindgren, especially Charlie Lindgren, who has 1 year left on his deal and is getting paid around $1.2 million, quite a deal there. Plus, if you add a sweetener of a prospect or like a Connor McMichael, Hendrix LaPierre, something of that nature, that is what it would take to facilitate something like this. Again, it might require much more. It just depends on, what the Maple Leafs are looking for. And, you can spread out the contract, like say, they get him and they sign him to a long extension or something of that nature. I don't think it's, impossible, but I think it's improbable, but it is something that, they talked about. Top six forward, I think Mitch Marner fits that bill. The Leafs themselves are facing a summer filled with trade rumors after yet another disappointing postseason, with Marner's name at the forefront of many of these rumors. While it would be unfair to attribute the Leafs' playoff struggles solely to Marner, his expiring contract and his prime years make him the most expendable of Toronto's core four. However, Marner has a no-move clause in his current contract, giving him the option to stay in Toronto or have a say where he's traded. Ultimately, it may be the best for both Marner and the Leafs if he got a start somewhere else. Hey, I'm all ears. I mean, I would just love the moment that I could come to you guys and say, hey, I have some really big news. The Capitals have acquired Mitch Marner. I mean, how crazy is that? And it's not that crazy. You take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are a team that has done their darndest to try and win a Stanley Cup, something that has eluded them for a long time. And it's a bit of a tragedy for the Maple Leafs, as that is a team that loves their hockey team. Even if they're poor, they love that team. I mean, it's, you take a look at hockey, the NHL in Canada, and it's similar to what the NFL is here. They love hockey up there. And so when their team is not doing well, they're willing to make changes. And one of the things I know is they need help in net. They need a lot of help, but that is one area in particular. And what is one of the things that the Capitals have a glut of is goaltenders, really good goaltenders. And it wouldn't be like the end of the world scenario if Kuemper left or Lindgren left, as we have Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson and Garen Bjorklund and Mitchell Gibson and down the pipeline, Antoine Keller. There is a lot of possibilities for the Capitals in net that even if one of those netminders moved, it's not the end of the world scenario. And then you take a look at it is, if you did move like a LaPierre or you moved a Connor McMichael, if you could get a player like a Mitch Marner, would you be willing to do that? Absolutely. I would be willing to do it because it's fun to talk about, how we have these prospects and these young players. And one day, I feel like I'm a grandpa talking to my grandkids. One day, this team is going to be really good. I don't want to live in the future. I want to live in the here and now. No, don't get me wrong. I don't think that they should sell the farm and totally deplete it. But what I'm saying is that if they have to give up something big to get something big, that's what you do. I mean, it's just take a look around all professional sports. If you want to get back into the winning business, that is what you've got to do. And the Capitals with a Mitch Marner or a Steven Stamkos, are they going to be better? You better believe they're going to be a lot better. That is something to be excited about. Those are the kind of things that I want Brian McClellan to pursue. And I know that Alex Ovechkin said in the offseason, he's like, hey, I'm not too involved, but hey, maybe you should call McDavid or Crosby. It's crazy things, but the Capitals are going to need to pursue big leads, get creative to make this team better. Again, Mitch Marner would be huge, but I don't know if Ted Leonsis has, tied shut the purse strings for Brian McClellan or what the case is, but they need to be aggressive because what I've heard from GM Brian McClellan is like, well, I'm going to see if there's someone available. That's not making me get a lot of warm fuzzies as a Capitals fan. I want a guy that says we're going to take care of it this summer. I don't care how it gets done. Get it done. I want competitive hockey back in the district in the fall. And I'm not trying to sound like a whiny baby about it. Winning hockey, for the Capitals is what it's all about. Let's get it done. Let's not be afraid to dream. And Brian McClellan, let's get creative. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel available on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.